What's up guys, Mark Bell here with my very first tutorial for the dry dock. What I have here is the Phase 2 Enterprise, and what I'm going to do here is show you how to set up the shaders for V-Ray. Now, as you know, all of my models are released for free, and I usually release them with Redshift materials. I release an FBX, OBJ, that kind of stuff, but I've stopped doing V-Ray because it's not really my renderer of choice anymore, but I know a lot of you still do use it, so I'm gonna show you how to set these maps up correctly so that they're interpreted in the right way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop in a light setup that I've already created for a V-Ray version of this thing. So let me just drop that in. And the reason I want to do that is so that I can see how the lighting actually reacts with the shaders. So let's just hit the render button and see what it gives us. Probably not much. Okay, so you can see it's completely gray here. Now, I'm showing you this inside of 3D Studio Max, but the general idea carries across any software package, okay? So I'm going to bring up my Slate material editor by hitting M on my keyboard inside of 3D Studio Max, M. And what I'm going to do is just come over here. I'm going to just open up my Scene Explorer and have a look at the geometry. So I've got about, let's see, what have I got here? About 7 pieces of geometry. Now, I have multiple shaders assigned to certain pieces of this. For example, the nacelles, I think, have 2 shaders assigned. The neck has 2, but I'm going to start with the saucer top because it's the largest area, and hopefully you'll get the gist of how to set up a shader here. So what I'm going to do is select the little eyedropper and pick saucer top. So I click this and my Redshift shader appears. Now you can see up here, doesn't render. That's because my current renderer is set to V-Ray, not Redshift, so it doesn't really know how to interpret that except a big gray sphere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click it, change material, map type. I'm going to come down here to V-Ray material. Now when I do that, all of these bitmaps disconnect, and that's okay because we're going to bin them. They're for Redshift, not for V-Ray. And I'm going to actually enable my IPR here, which is interactive progressive rendering. Okay, this will update with every little change that you make. So let's run it. Now you can see that there's no shading on the nacelles here or any other part of the ship apart from saucer top. That's because we've just converted this top piece to a V-Ray material. The rest of it is still Redshift. So we're going to start hooking up some of these maps. Now I'm going to just drag this over. Bitmap, I'm going to find my V-Ray shader, or my V-Ray textures. Alright, here we go. Saucer top. I'm going to keep this on a recommended gamma of 2.2. So let's just double click that and bring it in. Now you can see the color has assigned, and that's good, but we don't have any reflections yet. So what we need to do is start bringing in the rest of the maps and hooking them up to the right texture slot. Okay, so first things first, let's bring in the metalness. There we go. Let's bring it in, and I think it should be this one. Nope, it's this one. Okay, so something you need to be aware of when you bring these in. I designed everything about these shaders. Okay, I designed how reflective they are, how rough they're supposed to be. So when you load up the textures, there's a specific way that it's supposed to look. Now, if I double click this, look what happens. This gets very, very reflective. Okay, that is not how this is supposed to go. All right. So we're going to fix that, and we're going to drop in a roughness map, because now that this is really reflective, what we want to do is we want to roughen up this surface so that these specular highlights kind of bleed across the hull rather than look like chrome, you know. So let's drop in our reflective glossiness. There we go, roughness. Now nothing's happening here because I need to bring up my roughness. It's currently set to black. If I set it to white, look what happens. Yeah, so this is more what I'm looking for, but it's not quite right. Okay, and the reason for that is we have to set the appropriate gamma values on these bitmaps. Not this one, these. Because this is the painted map. This is the RGB value, the sRGB. This is how I intended for this map to look, okay? What these are their data maps, okay? So it's telling something in the shader to be a certain way, and the only way it can do that is if the bitmap is being interpreted correctly. Currently it's not, and I'm going to show you why. So currently the gamma is set to sRGB 2.2, okay? And that is because it's been corrected here, automatic recommendation. Okay, what we want to do is we want to overwrite this to linear. We want to keep it to 1. All right, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit OK. And just watch what happens. Pay attention to the surface of the hull. Okay, it changes. Now, we also want to do the same thing to the metallic map, because that's also a map which is telling values to be a certain way. So whenever I click from 2.2 to override to 1, look what happens. There's an override here. This gets brighter. So this is going to be more reflective. Okay? Now, we're nearly there. All we need to do is go into the V-Ray shader. I want to scroll down here, and I want to tell the BRDF to use roughness instead of glossiness. So what's this? Boom. See the difference? This is how I intended for this surface to look. Okay, see that? Go away, ArtStation. You see how this isn't hot, but you can see that there is a slight sheen to it. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so if you find that it's too bright, if it looks a little bit more like this, you might prefer it. Might be what you want. Personally, I kind of like it to be more like this, because it means that you can go into your compositing program and you've got more give. You know, I prefer to bring things up rather than push them back, and that's fine if you're working with linear EXRs or something. But if you just want to render straight out of 3D Studio Max and you want it to look nice, I mean, look at that. Okay, I'm just going to test as well the shadows. How do the shadows look on this thing as they run across the hull? So I'm just going to go into my directional. Okay, yeah. And look at that. That's because the light is coming in at its hottest point and it's not blowing out. Do you see that? It's bright, but it's not blowing out. Problem is, if I didn't have those values set correctly, look what would happen. Whoa, it's way too bright. That's not what we want. That's what we want. All right, so I'm just going to soften that shadow a little bit. Okay, looking pretty good. So last thing you want to do is just hook up the bump map, which I can do by dropping in I like to do it this way actually. Bump to normal. Plug in my normal map. And again, because this is something that's telling the shader to be a certain way, it's data more than an image. Okay, so I'm going to just set this to override, linear 1.0. Just check and make sure that my values are set to 100. Nope, they're set to 30. I want to set that to 100. I want to give it the full impact. Okay, and that is one shader setup. Now, it might seem a little bit daunting at first because there are a few things that you need to tweak and change, but ultimately it's just rinse and repeat. It's exactly the same thing. Like if I wanted to do, let's do another one to show you as an example. Let's do a nacelle. because the nacelle has some metallic properties inside of this this alcove thing here, inside the warp grid. And let me just pick that, just to show you real quick. And if we hit these buttons here, do you notice the way everything's just overlapping and not looking quite nice and neat? If we hit these buttons, it'll just space everything out nicely. Alright, so let's do the nacelle. So again, change material, change it to V-Ray material, delete this crap because we don't need it. Let's go into diffuse, let's pick the nacelle color, which is here. Gamma's okay at 2.2. Alright, so reflection glossiness. Yep, roughness, we want to override that to 1. Okay. We also want to add in our metallic, or our metalness. I always call it the metallic map. It's metalness. Override that to 1.0. Hit OK, and look how rough that's got, or how reflective it's got. Very, very, very shiny. Okay, not how it's supposed to look. And that's because we need to set this to use the roughness. Alright? And let's turn our reflectivity up. Like that. Alright. Looking good. Let's drop our bump map on as well. Like so. Alright, so if you do that, I don't know, about 5 more times, you'll have a complete ship. You will have something which looks like, I'm going to do a, here's one I made earlier. No, don't save that. Yep. Okay, yep, so if you do all of that the way I've instructed you to, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Pretty cool, huh? Alright, so that's going to be the first of our tutorials. Depending on how much support I get and if there's enough outcry for tutorials, what I'll start to do is maybe every week or so do a quick tutorial, just a little one, and then we can work towards maybe a tutorial series on how we actually build these ships from start to finish. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed this, hope you've learned a little bit of something, and again, thank you for your support and happy rendering.